Hey everyone, today we're going to be making my fish sauce dipping sauce that I eat with most Vietnamese dishes. We're going to start by melting sugar in a pot until it gets nice and caramelized. I know most people don't typically do this, but this is the way I learned it from my grandmother. I will say that if you've never melted sugar before, you're going to want to be very careful because it can burn very easily. So set your stove to medium to high heat and just swirl the pan around until the sugar dissolves. The reason why we're swirling the pan around opposed to using a wooden spoon to dissolve the sugar is because I don't want it to crystallize. I personally feel that once sugar crystallizes and turns hard, it doesn't caramelize as nicely anymore after that. So we're just going to continue to swirl until most of the sugar has melted, just like this. Towards the end, you're going to want to be very careful as the caramel can burn very quickly. So once you get about this color, you can add the water in and dissolve all the sugar with the water. At this point, you can continue to swirl the water until all the sugar dissolves, or you can also use a wooden spoon or spatula to dissolve the sugar into the water. If you were able to caramelize most of your sugar, it should dissolve quite easily with the water. Here I'm using a spatula to get the stubborn pieces of sugar that have not dissolved as nicely. Once all the sugar has melted, we're going to pour in the fish sauce and then bring the mixture back to a rolling boil. For this recipe, I'm using the squid brand fish sauce, which most people argue that you should not use as a dipping sauce, but just use for cooking. However, I grew up using it, so that's what I'm using for this recipe. I just want to say that not all fish sauce brands are the same, so make sure you use the squid brand if you want to replicate the same flavors. If you do decide to use a different brand, just note that you might have to adjust some of the ratios. I forgot to mention that during this process, you're going to want to open the windows or do it outside because the odor is quite strong. Once the mixture comes back to a boil, you're going to want to turn off the heat and transfer it to a heat-proof container. If you don't actually plan on using the sauce immediately, you can just let it cool inside the pot. However, if you need to use the sauce immediately, you're going to want to make an ice bath so that you can cool it down as quick as possible. So I actually ran out of ice cubes when I was making this recipe, so I'm also going to use ice packs that I kept in my freezer. Make sure you're putting it into a container that's large enough so that you can cover it with water. I'm a firm believer that this sauce tastes the best when it's nice and cold, so that's why I like to chill it. So just let it sit in the ice bath until it's nice and chilled. But if you're impatient just like me, you can give it a good stir every few minutes so that it chills even faster. While the sauce is chilling, you're just going to want to mince some garlic and some Thai chili peppers so that we can add into the sauce. You can totally do this part by hand or by throwing everything to a food processor, which is much faster, but since it's just a small amount, I usually just do it by hand. Back in the days, I never owned a food processor, so that's why I'm just so used to doing it by hand. Even now, even though I do have a food processor, I still do it by hand because that's just one less dish to wash, you know? Also, if you never mince garlic by hand, now you know how to do it. Just follow the same method that I did, and you should have minced garlic in a few minutes. Once you've minced up the Thai chilies and the garlic together, you're going to want to add it to your mixture. Once you've added it in, just give it a nice good mix so they can be dispersed evenly into the sauce. Note that the garlic and chilies will often float to the top, so every time you want to use the sauce, just give it a nice good mix. If the sauce is still warm, you can put it back into the ice bath. Next for this recipe, we're going to squeeze some fresh lime juice because the artificial one just does not taste the same. This is definitely one of the most hated parts of this recipe, but you just got to get through it and it's totally worth it in the end. If you have tools to help you squeeze the lime juice faster, you can totally use those. So once you finish squeezing all your lime juice, you can add it into the sauce. Depending on how sour you like your sauce, you can totally use more or less lime juice than I did because it's totally up to your personal preference. Once you've added the lime juice in, just give it a nice good stir so everything can be nice and combined. At this point, the sauce is basically complete, so you just want to give it a taste test to see what else you needed to add in. For me, it was lime juice, so I added about a quarter cup more. I honestly felt like it also needed some more Thai bird chilies, so I added that in as well. Everyone's palate is different, so just adjust everything according to your taste. And now your sauce is ready to be used for all your Vietnamese dishes. I personally use this for goi kung banh xeo and bún, but you can use it for whatever you'd like. I hope you enjoyed the recipe, and if you want the written recipe, you can find it on eatingwithblim.com. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.